Hi, my name is Kim and I'm an MRC Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics Clinical Research Fellow based at the University of Manchester. Coronavirus has been a dominant topic in our lives for the last few months, and there's been some confusion in the media about coronavirus testing. So I thought I'd talk a bit about the two different tests we have available, what they are, what they mean, and their limitations. So the two tests we have are the Coronavirus Diagnostic Test and the Coronavirus Antibody Test. I'm going to start with the Coronavirus Diagnostic Test, but first a little bit about the coronavirus. It's in COVID-19 for short, same family as the MERS and SARS coronaviruses. They are what we call RNA viruses, so their genomic material is made out of RNA, ribonucleic acid. There's other RNA viruses that cause infections in humans that you've heard of, so HIV, measles, hepatitis C. The genomic material, this RNA, is what we're looking for in a diagnostic coronavirus test. So how is this undertaken? How is the diagnostic test undertaken? Well, you get swabbed. So a swab is taken from the back of your throat, up your nose, sent to the lab, and coronavirus RNA is extracted. This RNA, this genome material, is converted into something that we call cDNA, complementary DNA, and then amplified. And then this is detected by a special machine. So if you have the presence of coronavirus genomic RNA on that swab, that will be detected and that will give you a positive diagnostic result, i.e. you've tested positive for coronavirus. If you don't have any coronavirus RNA that is detectable, this will give you a negative coronavirus result. So you've tested negative for coronavirus. The advantages of having a diagnostic coronavirus test is it will tell you whether you have got active coronavirus infection. However, it's not infallible because the diagnostic test is not 100% accurate. So we have research data that conservatively estimates around 3/4 of everyone who has coronavirus infection will test positive, i.e. there's a group of people with coronavirus who will test negative when they undergo a diagnostic test. Why is that? Well, there's a few reasons. This could be due to the sampling, so poor swabbing technique, or you've swabbed the teeth, not the throat, or it could be due to the anatomical site that's been swabbed. They've taken it from the nose and they haven't taken it from the throat. Other things could be storage and handling of the swab prior to getting to the lab. That could also give you a false result. And that is the diagnostic coronavirus test in a nutshell. What about the coronavirus antibody test? That's been in the news lately because two companies, Roche and Abbott, have had their antibody tests approved by the regulatory agency, the MHRA, in this country. So it's a completely different class of tests, the antibody tests. It's what we call Serology Test. So instead of detecting coronavirus RNA, it's actually detecting antibodies made in our own bodies against the coronavirus. Now, antibodies are made by our immune systems in response to infections, but they're also made if you've had a vaccination. Given that we don't have a COVID vaccination presently, what the COVID antibody test tells us is whether you've previously been infected with COVID. That is also useful. However, there are unknowns with the coronavirus antibody tests, and it is useful because it does tell you whether you've had infection with in the past with coronavirus, but we're not sure what this means. So what are the implications? For example, we don't know how long the antibodies will last for in the blood. We don't know if having coronavirus antibodies means that you are now immune to another coronavirus, another COVID-19 infection. There's also different types of coronavirus antibody tests. So there's one where it uses a finger prick sample of blood, and there's another one where you have to have a larger volume of blood taken from a vein. The coronavirus antibody test taken from the vein is probably more accurate right now because there's been research, Oxford University researchers have shown that a lot of these finger prick coronavirus antibody tests that are available on the market in other countries have not been accurate enough and are just not up to the MHRA standards required for marketing in this country. So that's the antibody test. Why has it taken a bit longer to have an antibody test than a diagnostic PCR test? Well, a diagnostic test requires you to know the genomic RNA sequence of the coronavirus, and genome sequencing is very easy, cheap and quick, and that is why we've been able to sequence the coronavirus RNA. Sequence has been made public since early January, and we've had diagnostic RT-qPCR tests since early January. Protein tests, so serology tests, are a lot more complicated. There's many more steps in the design of an antibody test, so it inevitably takes a lot longer. And however, as I've discussed, there are still some unknowns, uncertainties. Going forwards, it's likely to be a combination of diagnostic coronavirus testing, antibody testing, public health measures that together will be more useful than any alone. So hopefully that's given you a little bit more detail into what a diagnostic coronavirus test is and what a coronavirus antibody test is. Thank you for listening and take care. Bye.